Hey everyone! Today we're going to take a look at how to draw faces. We'll begin with a simple front view and we'll take our time exploring the features as we go. I'll be working in Photoshop with a basic round brush, but you're welcome to follow along with whatever tool feels most comfortable for you. Alright then, let's get started. First, we'll start with a simple circle. Try to keep it nice and round, but don't worry if it's not perfect. We can always take a little time to refine it until it feels right. Now let's take a look at the proportions of the face. Think of the head as roughly 2 squares wide by 3 squares tall. If we add the length of another square at the bottom, we can include the neck as well. Of course, exact proportions vary from person to person, so I recommend treating this more as a flexible framework rather than a strict rule. So our first important landmarks are going to be the chin, the eyebrows, and the nose. The easiest way to understand the nose is to imagine it as a drop shape, starting between the eyebrows and becoming widest at the bottom. Once you're happy with that basic shape, you can add the wings and the nostrils. But first, let's sketch the lips. The mouth sits just above the halfway point between the chin and the nose. The philtrum is the small groove that connects the nose to the upper lip. For the upper lip, we'll give it a gentle arch, and for the lower lip, we'll suggest its shape with a simple thin line. I sketch the chin as a rounded shape that comes close to touching the lower lip. Time for a little cleanup. Let's erase the lines we won't need anymore and sketch in the ears. The ears usually sit between the level of the eyebrows and the bottom of the nose. Okay, let's take a look at the eyes. To understand their structure, it helps to imagine the eyeball first. Then we can draw the upper and lower lids wrapping around it, just brushing the iris and forming a small pouch. Above the eye there's usually a fold, which is often more subtle in Asian faces. Notice how I'm adding shadows under the eyebrow and along the lower lid. Between the two eyes, there's usually about one eye's width of space. See how I adjust the lower eyelid slightly. By drawing a straighter line that gently overlaps the iris, we create the impression that the face is smiling at us. Before we move on, let's sketch in some hair. For this face I found a reference on Pinterest and I'd like to give her the same haircut as in the photo. A bob with bangs. Okay, let's add in some detail. I lower the opacity of my sketch to make it easier to draw on top. If you're working digitally, you can create a new layer, or if you're on paper, simply lighten your sketch with a soft touch of the eraser. It might look a little like I'm jumping around here as I continue, but what I'm trying to do is to create an overall impression of how the face is going to look like in the end. So here I'm adding a few eyelashes, I'm darkening the nostrils and sketching in some hairs for the eyebrow. For this I use a soft brush to add some shading and then I clean it up with a lasso tool by cutting away the parts I don't need. Then I add a bit of shadow to the upper lip, since in most lighting setups the upper lip tends to fall into shadow. As a concept artist, I prepare visuals in a way that should make it easier for 3D artists to understand. For this reason I draw hair as simplified volumetric shapes rather than complex overlaps and detailed strands. Before adding shadows, I like to sketch a few guiding lines to show where the hair will have its reflections. Alright, for the shadows I grab the lasso tool again and use a soft brush to fill in the areas. We'll start with the shadows under the eyebrows. Then I repeat the same thing for the lower eyelid and the nose. While we're at it, we can also apply a little makeup. So let's take a look at the lips for a moment. The philtrum is a small groove that connects the upper lip to the nose, and from there, the upper lip forms a gentle arch from one corner of the mouth to the other. I like to darken the corners slightly. At the center, the upper lip has a little extra volume, almost like a small pillow. We usually draw the upper lip darker to show the change of planes and give it a three-dimensional feel. Here you can see the same thing from the side view, the nose, the chin and the lips in between. Now let's see if we can apply this to our portrait. By softly darkening the corners of the mouth, we can create the impression of a subtle smile. Let's add in the cheeks. If you're working on paper, simply use a soft hatching with your pencil. If you're working digitally, use the lasso tool with a soft brush again. Feel free to experiment with different brushes as well to suggest a bit of a skin texture. Now let's add some shadows to the ears and darken the eyes a bit. Let's select the skin area and darken it a little as well. This will make it easier to add highlights afterward. For the highlights I create a new layer, set the opacity to 100% and use a medium-sized brush to paint them in. If you're working on paper, you can use a white gel pen or simply create the highlights with an eraser. Let's darken the lips a little and add some highlights to the eyes as well. As our final step, let's take a look at the hair. We'll give it an overall darker value and then add extra shadows and highlights on two separate layers. This way we can adjust the opacity until we're satisfied. Alright, that's it for today. Keep practicing this, try out different references and make this lesson your own. If you'd like to dive deeper and really level up your drawing, don't forget to check out my book on Amazon. It's got tons of exercises, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next lesson. Alright, bye!